Hey, those shouldn't be on. We haven't had a comma stack yet. What's going on, everybody? Happy Tuesday. What the hell? That's P-Dog shit. Why is that on? Why are those on? Why is P-Dog stuff coming through? What is happening? What the hell is happening here? Oh, boy. Check off the technical difficulties. Okay, maybe it's just gone, I guess. I don't know. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Tucker Tuesday. What's going on, chat? Happy Tuesday. Hope everyone's having a lovely, lovely day out there today. Oh, boy, what's going on, guys? What's the haps? What's the hibbity and the happity? How is everybody doing out there? We got Pinky Salmon, hello, J. Kate, Advocates, Zobels, Tier, Matt Barnes, Mike Savage, all the home slices. Brian, hello, Big Dave, what up? All the home slices are here today, and that's what the fuck I'm talking about. We don't have a lot of time to yip yap and jaw jack, etc., etc. So we are going to jump into this pretty quickly. So guys, please smash that like button. Please share it out on your social media. And should you feel so inclined, please consider hitting up that Streamlabs. We have a whole shitload of new donations annotated with question marks down below. And we are going to jump right into Tucker's take on the Hamas and Israel stuff.
Person can watch the video of young people being...
I forgot to mention, we have a new Stacker Aura, which is amazing. We have a new Stacker song from Pinky Salmon, and a new donation. And I have a bottle I want to try really badly from None Ya Business.
Being murdered at a music festival in southern Israel without feeling horrified. It's awful, and there's no excusing it. No matter what you think of...
What's funny, though, is that these people will still bend over backwards to try to excuse it. If you took the average lefty take on what's happening in Israel right now and transposed it onto a right-winger from 2015, 2016, they would be a straight-up Nazi.
Israel's policies in Gaza, you are not allowed to shoot people at music festivals. That's a crime. Israel has a right to respond to that crime and to defend itself. No one seriously contests that. The question for American policymakers, however, is what do we do next? How do we represent the interests of the United States in this chaotic moment? That's not a selfish question. It's the whole point of making policy for a country, to improve and protect that country. If you serve in the U.S. Congress or in the executive branch of government, you have a moral duty to think this way. It's your job. You serve the United States.
Sorry, Miss N was chatting in my ear. Let me pull this back a second. I'm sorry, guys. Tucker's a little low? Okay. Give it a little bit of a volume boost.
The question for American policymakers, however, is what do we do next? How do we represent...
We don't get involved. That is exactly what we do. We don't get involved. These people have been warring for hundreds, if not thousands of years over the same fucking hunk of land. We don't get involved. That's exactly what we do. Or don't do, rather.
The interests of the United States in this chaotic moment. That's not a selfish question. It's the whole point of making policy for a country, to improve and protect that country. If you serve in the U.S. Congress or in the executive branch of government, you have a moral duty to think this way. It's your...
Yeah, but these people haven't been pro-America in God knows how long. They simply don't care what we have to go through.
Job. You serve the United States and its population. You have no moral authority except to the extent that you represent your fellow Americans. That's our system. It used to be obvious, but it's worth remembering now, because the conflict between Israel and Hamas could escalate into a war between Iran and its allies and the West.
And I think, unless shit calms down rather quickly, I think that is exactly what's going to happen. I think that's what is supposed to happen.
Once a war like that starts, you could easily imagine the use of nuclear weapons and all that entails. Millions dead, the collapse of the global economy. At the very least, you could see an unprecedented energy crisis here. Already gas in one Bay Area service station hit $7.29 a gallon over the weekend.
And that's probably down from where it was a while ago.
If that trend worsens and persists, the United States, which is already, technically speaking, bankrupt, would plunge into depression. And no, it would not be like the 1930s. Close to 10 million people have come here over the last 3 years from the poorest places in the world. The overwhelming majority of them are on some form of federal subsidies. You wonder how that's going to work out when the U.S. government runs out of money. So there's a lot at stake in how we encourage Israel to respond to the horrifying Hamas attacks. Wisdom and long-term thinking are essential, but you will not be surprised to learn that is not what we are getting.
Are you surprised by that? I'm surprised by that. This is my very non-sarcastic voice.
Watch this person, for example, who happens to be the media's pick for President of the United States.
This is not just an attack on Israel. This is an attack on America because they hate us just as much. And what we have to understand is this is the reason that we have to unite around making sure our enemies do not hurt our friends. America can never be so arrogant to think we don't need friends, just like we needed them on 9/11. That's why Ukraine needs us when Russia's doing this. That's why Israel needs us when Hamas and Iran are doing this. And I'll say this to Prime Minister Netanyahu, finish them. Finish them. Hamas did.
Oh, Jesus Christ. What a psychopath. Finish them. Go in there and send our children to die for a country that isn't ours. You out of your fucking mind?
This, you know Iran's behind it. Finish them. They should have hell to pay for what they've just done.
This was an attack on America, she says, when in fact it was not. And for that reason, we must, quote, finish Iran, a nation of nearly 90 million people. What are we watching here? This is not sober leadership. She's a child, and this is the tantrum of a child, ignorant, cocksure, bloodthirsty. Yet no one in Washington scolded her for it. In fact, they aped her hysteria. Here's fellow neocon Lindsey Graham just spelling it out and calling for the bombing of Iran.
So I've been on the phone all day to the Mideast, and I've told our allies.
Oh, I wonder what Lindsey Graham's take is going to be. This is, I'm sure, going to shock everybody.
And people with connections to Iran. What I would do, I would tell Iran that if Hezbollah attacks Israel.
And now they're saying that a bunch of American citizens were killed in this attack. Even then, I'm not super sure we should get involved in this. This just sounds like... This sounds like a money hole that we just won't be able to get ourselves out of.
We're going to come after you, the Iranians, and have a coordinated effort between the United States and Israel to put Iran out of the oil business by destroying their refineries. There are 4 major refineries in Iran. They're fixed targets. If Hezbollah attacks Israel, I would make Iran pay a heavy price.
What exactly would happen to the United States if we declared war on Iran and started blowing up their infrastructure? Lindsey Graham has no clue what would happen. He hasn't thought it through. He's almost 70 years old and he has no children. He doesn't care.
Yeah, I think that's a huge issue with a lot of this stuff is these people don't, for lack of a better word, they don't have skin in the game. They just don't have skin in the game. They don't care what happens when they're gone.
But neither, amazingly, do most of his colleagues in Washington. They're as reckless as he is. Texas Congressman Dan Crenshaw took to social media to call for what he described as a war to end all wars.
Oh, that sounds great. That's very reassuring. It doesn't sound nuclear at all.
As if there is such a thing. But of course there isn't such a thing. Wars beget more war. The bigger the conflict, the uglier and longer lasting the consequences. See World War I for details. These are not complex observations, but they seem lost on our leadership class. Alone among candidates running for the Republican nomination for president, Vivek Ramaswamy dared to suggest that actually going to war with Iran might not be in America's national interest. And for
that, I'm sure they were going to try to ban him from the next Republican debate.
Saying that, Mike Pence immediately denounced him as gutless and unpatriotic or something.
Gutless for not wanting to send our children to die. That's gutless to Mike Pence. Sir, the American populace is rapidly losing care for the Ukraine conflict. What should we do? Military-industrial complex must continue. Bomb Israel. Yeah, it's not too far. It's not too far.
But we thought it might be worth hearing more. Vivek Ramaswamy.
Thank you, Anon. I appreciate that. Bringing us $1 to goal.
Swami joins us now. Vivek, thanks so much for coming on. So if I'm reading this correctly, you suggested, while offering what seemed like real sympathy to the Israeli people, and to the many murdered there 2 days ago, you noted that maybe it's not in America's best long-term interest to declare.
It's not in a long-term or short-term interest. It's not in our interest at all. It's just that these people want money, and the way they get money is from the military-industrial complex. We all know this to be true. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men in Congress get money from the, the thing.
War in Iran. Is that what you said?
I actually said this long before this crisis when people were thinking.
Meanwhile, we have actual issues on our southern border that we're not allowed to deal with. We have to just let that slide.
Clear-headedly. And I just want to say a couple of things that are obvious but important, Tucker. I mean, what happened against Israel? You said it, I believe it. It is barbaric. It is medieval.
Yeah. I don't think anybody is denying that what happened there isn't barbaric, that it's a bunch of 7th century fucking savages attacked a bunch of innocent people. But it's not our problem. It sounds crass and rude and harsh, but it is the way it is.
It is wrong, and Israel as a nation absolutely has the right to self-defense, to its own national existence. And I think they should have our moral and diplomatic support as an ally. But there's one element of this that nobody's talking about. What the hell went wrong with U.S. and Israeli intelligence and the Israeli defense that allowed this to happen?
That is very weird. Israel has the single, maybe second best defense network in the world, and they couldn't catch on to this?
Everybody seems to be punting that as a question for later. I think it's a question for now, if you're Israel. I mean, look, I think that Nikki Haley, I disagree with you a little bit there. I don't think she's a child. I think that she is somebody who is, like many politicians, in a position to get wealthier from war. Look at the military contracting business and otherwise. But put that to one side. The message that I would send would be very different. Get to the bottom of what allowed this gaping hole of intelligence and defense to even happen before feeding that same beast. If a doctor told you...
Some people have suggested that the IDF has allowed this to happen so they could bring the hammer down. I could believe that.
His job was to keep you from getting cancer, and then you got that cancer. Don't go trust that same doctor to remove your tumor. They don't let airplanes, when they crash, the pilots or the people who crash the airplane, that airliner is not the one who reviews the black box. And so I think those answers have to come now. That's not a question for later. And I think one of the learnings for the U.S., I think there's a lot of learnings for the U.S., Tucker, but one of the learnings is if that establishment can get it wrong in Israel from a U.S. perspective, that could happen right here at home. And if anything, as an ally, one of
That's true. The Iron Dome was designed to shoot down fast-moving targets, not slow-flying dudes. That's very true. That is very true.
One of the things that we need to wake up to is that we're vulnerable here in the United States to the same. And so we can do some things to prevent that, secure our border, stop funding. I mean, I think one of the things that's been wrong in the U.S. is we have a bad habit while we're bankrupt funding both sides of wars that should have been avoided in the first place. Look at the money that's indirectly found its way to Hamas, the $6 billion paid to Iran in the recent.
And don't let it escape us that part of the arsenal that Hamas has used in this savage attack was supposedly, possibly, it is very likely that this stuff was American arms given to Ukraine. Don't let that go. Alan for 5 on the super says, hello, Sinatra. Hello, Alan. Thank you very much. Oh, shit. My description's a little screwy. All right, there we go. I didn't save it. Okay, there we go. That's where it should be. Slabs is back at the top.
Ransom. That was a disaster.
I said talk to me, damn it, or else I'm gonna throw you in the fire!
Oh, that's good. That's a Korn Chucky. That's pretty good. Oh boy, oh boy. Spoofers. Word on the street in the Commonwealth and domestic offices, they are currently operating double time, wargaming, and generally freaking out. Nothing has been actioned yet, though. I mean, it is completely possible that this just caught everybody by surprise. That is very possible. I personally find it unlikely, but possible.
Yet we're effectively now
thank you, spoofers. I appreciate it, buddy.
Funding both sides of a war that we shouldn't have been in the first place in places like Russia and Ukraine even. Think about how we hampered oil production in the United States and then now has funding, U.S. funding going to Ukraine in fighting back against Russia. It's a bad habit in the United States, and we need leaders here who will look after what advances American interests. And I find what Dan Crenshaw said to be cringeworthy. It is shameful.
I like this guy. He's got some shady shit on his record, but generally, I like Vivek.
World War I was supposed to be the war that ended all wars, that got us to World War II. That can't be the way that we run foreign policy. The job of American leaders is to advance American interests, and I think we support Israeli leaders asking what advances and defends Israel as we should, morally and diplomatically, but leaders here need to look after American interests first.
The conversation can't be limited to right and wrong. I mean, I don't think there's anyone defending the murder of concert goers in the Negev 2 days ago is, disqualified from, being taken seriously. Yeah. Of course, that's wrong. But it doesn't seem like any American policymaker is even willing to entertain other questions like what's in America's best interest, what effect will this have on the global economy, on our economy, on energy prices. These are not small things. They should.
No, these are top priorities that they're not concerned about because they're not the ones that are going to have to deal with the outcome.
Not be dismissed, but they are dismissed out of hand, and you're some sort of quizzling if you even raise the question. Why is that? It seems crazy to me.
Well, look, I mean, if you want to ask the question of right and wrong, then open that Pandora's box. I don't favor doing this, but look at what's happening with Azerbaijan and Armenia. You don't really hear much about that now. Why? Because Azerbaijan's lobby is about as effective as Ukraine's is in Washington, D.C. So this selective moral outrage, I do think is a problem.
May I ask you to pause for just one moment there and just unpack that for viewers who are not aware of what you're referring to? Armenia, Azerbaijan, what is happening?
Yeah, so, I mean, what's happening is an atrocity. I mean, you have people who are Armenians, largely Christians, six-figure numbers, 100, 120,000, being driven back to their country from a region that has long been a place they have called home. A lot of atrocities that aren't even yet coming to light in Western media. But Azerbaijan has a lobby, a powerful lobby in Washington, D.C., and I think a big
I haven't heard shit about this, and yes, spoofers, you are stream boss. Low HP, definitely take outable, but you are the stream boss.
Part of what's wrong in the United States today, Tucker, and I don't mean to toot my own horn, but it's why I'm coming in as an outsider to this nonsense, is you have a system that is bought and paid for, both for the people who run on the Democratic ticket, people who run on the Republican ticket, and people who make those decisions in Washington, D.C. that are effectively managed by, in this case, the Azerbaijan lobby that has a lid on discussing this conflict, which, as you pointed out, most Americans haven't heard of. But you'll hear endlessly about Russia's incursion on Ukraine and having to stand on the right side. That's a separate point where I reject that Ukraine is inherently good anyway. But even if it were, a selective moral outrage in that case, but not another one in just a neighboring area that interfaces with Russia as well. So open that Pandora's box around.
The only thing I could think of that would cause these differences is the fact that certain people get money from it and certain people don't.
The world. I mean, look at much of Africa. Look elsewhere. You're going to find ability to have selective moral outrage. But you only hear about it in certain selective cases that the media and the existing establishment in both parties deem fit for the American public. And what we need is...
I can't be the only person that finds that very concerning, that there can be major fucking things happening like Azerbaijan, like all this shit, and we just have no idea. Polly brought it up once or twice that there currently right now in the world are like 9 hot wars happening, and we only focus on one. Now 2 of them. What up, Baba?
Leaders in this country who are honest in calling out atrocities where they occur. What happened in Israel was wrong. I think we require leaders, some on the far left are too afraid to say it. It was wrong. But at the same time, we need leaders on the right who are willing to say it in other places too, like what's happening in Azerbaijan and Armenia. But at the same time, to have the clarity and American-centric forethought to say what policy decisions we make are separate from the moral judgments that we will pass. So to say we will be with you diplomatically, absolutely. To say you have our moral support, absolutely. That we're not going to get in the way of you defending your national boundaries, absolutely.
I have had a real hard time coming up with an opinion and a take on this because, honestly, I don't know. I don't know what's happening. I don't know the general past and all this stuff between Israel and Palestine. This is something I just don't know too much about. But I know for a fact that, you know, people like Hassan Piker and Vaush and all these guys are losing their shit in support of Palestine. So I think that's a pretty good indication that, you know, maybe I should be leaning the other way on it. I know that what's happening right now is a caveman-esque atrocity. This is 7th century fucking cavemen attacking people, citizens, children, beheading children, all this shit. That's what's in the newspaper. It's awful. It is truly awful. They have our moral, they have our whatever support, but you don't need our financial support.
Even further, to say that in limited circumstances that advance U.S. interests, we will provide munitions. We can't do it across the board. It's a zero-sum game when it comes to munitions between Israel, Ukraine, Taiwan next in the future. But in a limited way that advances U.S. interests, that has to be the sole prism. And that doesn't exist right now, Tucker, in the establishment of either political party. And I think that the things that we're saying now to some may sound uncouth. I don't think they should. This is what the job of a national leader actually ought to be. And that's how I'm planning to lead this country if I'm elected.
I got to say, you mentioned more.
I think there might be a stronger argument for an American interest in Israel existing than Ukraine. I think there's probably a stronger argument for that. But the whole fucking Middle East for hundreds and thousands and longer of years has been nothing but a shit mess firefight. It just is what it is. That is how it has been. We need to focus on our own military before we focus on Israel's. But that's why the stream goal up above is yeet the whole Middle East, because there is literally no other way to handle this. Glass it and start again.
Moral outrage, and I thought the videos from southern Israel were morally outrageous, and I was offended by them and saddened by them. Anyone who saw them, I think, was. But you don't have to look far in the United States for moral outrages also on video. And there's not a city in this country, not just the big cities, but cities of 10,000 people. I was in one yesterday. That doesn't have some constellation of drug-addicted young people living outside. We call them the homeless. They're drug addicts. And they're addicted to drugs that were imported across an open border, allowed by the Biden administration. And they're dying, more than 100,000 a year. Now, you could call it genocide. You can call it whatever you want, but it's the death of over 100,000 Americans a year and the living death of millions more who are living outside. So sure. I don't understand. People are outraged by what happened in Israel. And again, I want to add my voice to that because I'm a human being. But the scale of the outrage.
It is some truly, really and truly barbaric, disgusting stuff that has happened.
Among Republican presidential candidates was so much more intense. One of them took to a bullhorn and started yelling about it. I get it, but no one would think to do that.
And then in Australia and in the England, there are pro-Palestinian leftist Antifa black bloc types going out chanting gas publicly. Like, it's very interesting.
About the 100,000 American young people murdered every year, and they are murdered, honestly, by
give me a bullhorn
synthetic
for that
opioids.
one.
Like,
Chuck.
what?
I'll take my bullhorn for that one. And let's just go a little bit deeper on that one.
I just personally am not sure if it's enough for us to send our children to die in this war. I'm just not sold on that yet.
This is the product of some intentional design. I mean, there are literally synthetic precursors to make synthetic fentanyl coming from Wuhan, of all places, to Mexican drug cartels south of our own border, pumping that up. And you want to just numbers to get the scale intact. 50 times the number of people who died on 9/11 are going to die this year as a consequence of fentanyl just
Sorry, I choked on my own saliva.
Crossing our southern border. A couple days ago, I was actually at our northern border in the northern part of New Hampshire. Totally wide open border. I mean, to call this porous is an overstatement. It's just an open border. And there was enough fentanyl that crossed just last year, 2022, to kill 3+ million Americans. That was just the amount that was caught, let alone the amount that wasn't. And so this is the product of intentional design. People will say, is that because of a drug epidemic in demand? You know, that's a separate debate, but a lot of that fentanyl is being laced into. People who are taking it have no idea that they're
But remember, Junkel said this isn't happening.
taking fentanyl, taking other drugs that have fentanyl in it that's killing them on the spot. That's closer to bioterrorism. Nobody would call it an overdose if you put it in a Big Mac. There is no level of moral outrage. Forget the Democratic Party. I've written that one off. In the Republican Party, of the same scale of this incursion right here at home. And so one of the things that allies do is they learn from each other. I think that intelligence sharing operations is critical with allies, with Israel and otherwise. I think one of the things we can do is learn from both the successes and, in this case, a bad failure in the case of our ally. To say, if we have borders that are as open as ours, even Israel that had a border as tightly protected as its own saw this happen, we could have far worse or the equivalent happening right here at home.
I could see an argument to that. I could definitely see an argument to that.
I mean, other things that nobody's talking about, Tucker, is not just border defenses. We don't have an Iron Dome in this country, yet we're vulnerable to nuclear missile attacks any given day, and we're marching closer into nuclear conflict in multiple parts of the world, most notably with Russia. Think about cyber defenses. And if that really was a cyber attack, or whatever explanation it might be for why Israel was caught off guard, we're vulnerable to cyber attacks in this country. Electromagnetic pulse attacks, nobody's talking about, that could take out our electric grid, which, by the way, has 60 Chinese transformers in it. You know, talk about space-based defenses, totally missing in the United States of America. That's where my outrage is highest, is our own vulnerability.
Yeah, but this is stuff we're not allowed to talk about because it could happen.
Right here in the homeland. And I do not think that it is crass. I think it is the morally correct answer for leaders of nations to ask how they protect the interests of their nation. That comes with allies. And so I think that it is important not to create an equivalence between Hamas and Israel, as some on the American left and European left are trying to do. It is wrong what happened to Israel. And I call that out as
hate facts, all hate facts.
As a human being and as somebody who's on a belief of some people are on the right side and the wrong side of a conflict, I think that that is far clearer here than it is, for example, in the Russia-Ukraine conflict or other areas where people have baked that cake. But the selective nature of ignoring certain other conflicts, while even more importantly, ignoring the interests of the U.S. right here at home, is what irritates the heck out of me, out of the politicians in both parties. And it is shameful. And I think that there are, frankly, financial and corrupting influences that lead them exactly to speak the way they do. That's just the hard truth.
You know what worries me? On like a really human level. What worries me is that I think, and if you think I'm wrong, please let me know. I think that we are moving past a time when anti-war people will be able to get elected. I think we are quickly moving past that time, and that we are going to have to we're going to have pro-war people in order to get the votes, because we've seen that the deep state and all this other shit is way too powerful.
How could you pay for a much-needed defense system in another country but not in your own country? I don't understand that. I mean, how can you pretend to be a leader in your country if you're doing something like that? It seems so immoral to me.
Well, pretending is a good word to use. I do think it's immoral, Tucker, to abandon, completely abdicate defending our own border, yet worrying about other people's borders more than we worry about our own. That's not to legitimize anything that's happening in other parts of the world. Far from
Obviously
it. It deserves to be condemned. But start, if you're the president of the United States, your obligation is to your homeland. Defend your homeland. People.
Well, that would be the hope.
Will say in response.
Just like I hope you guys have smashed the like button. I hope you have shared it out. And if you're able to, I hope you've considered hitting up that Streamlabs. It is greatly appreciated. We have a ton of new spoopy boopy donos and all that stuff.
I get this, right, from the other presidential candidates. Oh, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. You are neither walking nor chewing gum. You are absolutely leaving our country vulnerable to every form of attack until it's too late. But then it's one thing, Tucker, to say that, okay, people come to this conclusion if this is a new question. This isn't a new question. We spent $3 trillion in Iraq and in Afghanistan. To what end exactly? Is the Taliban still in control in Afghanistan? In Iraq, we still have hostile, effectively anti-American control, vulnerable to Iranian incursion as well while we're at it. To what end? And so if you don't learn from the mistakes of the past, it's not like we haven't had plenty of opportunities to reflect on that in the recent past. If you don't learn from those mistakes in the past, you're destined to make the same mistakes in the future. And right now we're in a position that's even more bankrupt, even more in the hole, $33 trillion in the hole, than we were when we marched our way into those foreign wars last time around.
And those turned out very well.
So I think it's important to be clear about what we will and won't do as the United States of America. That gives clarity to our allies who deserve clarity from the United States. That's the other dimension of this, too, is by being vague about what that means. Yelling, finish them, finish them, finish them into a screen. What does that actually mean? By creating a false equivalence between an attack on America, which thankfully we haven't had, and an attack on an ally of America, you create moral confusion in absence of hard red lines. And I think that's what I'm worried about very much so in Russia. There are no clear red lines when we're using a moral justification to advance a war that doesn't advance American interests. The last thing is we need to repeat that same mistake in other parts of the world. That's a formula for getting to World War III. And if you're someone like a Nikki Haley,
we're getting damn close with Russia, too,
who is going to profit from World War III, I think you're disqualified from being the president of the United States.
I feel so sorry for the Israelis and for the Ukrainians, for that matter. I have no sympathy at all for our leaders. I think they're disgusting. So let me ask you just one last question. So Nikki Haley, Mike Pence, this Crenshaw guy, probably the entire leadership of the Republican Party, effectively calling for war with Iran, U.S. war with Iran. What would that mean, do you think?
So I do not think that it is a good idea for us to enter war with Iran.
I feel like you could have left the with Iran out of that. It's probably just a good idea to not enter war. I think that's pretty accurate.
I think it would be good, and the outcome that I expect is that Israel will be successful in defeating Hamas here, in protecting its own homeland. They've done it countless times before. I think they're going to do it again. I think it is appropriate for the U.S. to support Israel diplomatically at the UN when they're going to come after Israel or otherwise, for the U.S. to take a strong stand in favor of an ally that has been good and can continue to be good to the U.S. And I think that limited military support as well, without using ground troops on the ground, military support without ground troops, that makes sense. But I think for others who have refused to take the option of ground troops off the table or whatever, I think we're doing a disservice to everybody, especially here in the United States. And I do not think that right now, I mean, one of the things to remember, Tucker, is people at domestic policy will say it's the economy stupid. Foreign policy, it's China stupid. That's really what we need to remember. Russia is being driven further into China's hands. Iran is backed by China economically as well. Sanctions and everything else, part of the reason why they haven't had the effect is that China's still got their back. And so right now, I mean, if you look at even the artillery shells that earlier this year, 300,000 to the tune of U.S. artillery shells stored in Israel that we encouraged to send to Ukraine, it's a zero-sum game. And so we're actually rolling out the red carpet, depleting multiple reserves between Ukraine and Israel. I think we are paving the red carpet for China to annex Taiwan while we still depend on Taiwan foremost for our modern way of life in a way that we don't for Ukraine or other conflicts that we're marching our way into. And so that's the way we need to look at this, is what advances American interests. Yes, stand firmly for what's right and wrong diplomatically and otherwise, but do it in a way that responsibly looks after American interests first. And that's the real divide in the Republican Party. I do think we have a real fundamental ideological divide in the Republican Party, and we ought to be able to have that debate in the open. I think we're not having it right now. And I, for my part, will be unapologetic in standing for putting the interests of this nation first, because
Well, you should be apologetic because 90% of the constituents and our other politicians are not going to stand for that. They're either pro-Israel, pro-Ukraine, but they're never pro-America. Pro-America is such a minority of people that it's not even funny. Like right now, your stream boss is a Brit. I thought this was a pro-American chat.
that happens to be the office that I'm running for, while being crystal clear about the fact that what happened in Israel was wrong. It was barbaric. It was something that was inhumane, and we have to provide the moral and diplomatic support that we need. At the same time, the job of the U.S. president is to stand for American citizens here in the homeland, and that's how I'm planning to lead.
Well, that's right. They have no right, our leaders have no right, except to act in the interest of the United States. Anything outside that is immoral, and they have no authority.
Nice Fostonia for the 4501. Dono unlocked. What does this do? Well, that's Hallowick. That's the Hallowick donation. Thank you very much, Fostonia. But look at that HP on fucking spoofers. Holy shit. Talk about an overkill bonus. Good goddamn. Thank you so much, Fostonia. Unlocked indeed. Hallowick. Bang. Hallowick. Oh. Spoofer's coming back in for the 50. Oh, no, you don't. It looks like he didn't. That doesn't make sense. Hold on. Oh, it looks like he did. Why did it not update? That's fucking weird. Oh, sorry about that, spoofers. Huh. That's very weird. Well, now you could take down Fostonia if you want.
So anyway,
Thank you, spoofers. I appreciate it, buddy.
I appreciate you're willing to explain your views on this and to say something that was unpopular with the reckless morons running our country.
If I want to just say one,
I think that's an accurate description of the people in charge, the reckless morons.
thing, Tucker,
please go ahead.
I was just thinking about the why on this, right? Because I think that for me, for a long time, looking at this from the outside, I'm not in the world of politics, or I'm in the world of politics now, but for like all of 7 months. Before that, I'm looking at it from the outside in. You wonder why, right? It's a bit of a mystery when you see the Lindsey Grahams or the Nikki Haley's or the John Boltons or the, other people of this persuasion, the Mike Pence's, the Chris Christie wing of this party. Being now in the sport, I think I do have a much better understanding for why.
You guys saw that too, right? It said like 400, and then spoofers donated and Fostonia became stream boss. I don't know.
It's played the way that it is. It comes down, in most cases, some people do have ideological commitments that are outdated, that are earnest, but a lot of it comes down to money. The corrupting influence of super PACs on the process. And I think that in the same frame of putting American interests first in our foreign policy, even when you think about a left-wing idea from 15, 20 years ago, heck, I'd embrace it now to say, get the influence of super PACs and mega money out of politics. I would be happy to tell any super PAC backing me to give money back to those mega donors and that I want to show up at your events or whatever, as long as Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis and Tim Scott and everybody else parading in a political race as standing for their own views does the same thing. And that's not a panacea. It's not a fix-all. But when you understand that there are interests at work that go beyond just the earnest debate of differing views, that's really, I think, how we're going to get back to honest discourse in the Republican Party and in American politics is get the influence of mega money out of politics. The super PACs are a cancer. I'm happy to lead the way. But without that, I think we're going to probably just be destined to expect more of the same. That's just the hard fact.
How soulless would you have to be to take cash in exchange for wrecking your own country? And by the way, the ones who are emotionally committed to it, the true warmongers, I know all of them. And I can say this about them, not one of them has a normal sex life. I'm just saying that. That's true. Whatever. I'll leave that to you,
I'm glad you liked it. I'm glad you liked it, Fastonia.
Dr. Freud. Anyway, Vivek, thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Good seeing you.
It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. I don't know what the right course is, but I know it's just going to be, it's going to be very arduous, I think would be the right word. Now we have a speech at Tucker at the ISI. Let me check that like ratio before we get too far into this. I'm going to put this on 1.25 because if I'm going to be honest, I'm super fucking tired. I think I hurt myself at the gym, so I'm just trying to have a tight show tonight. We have 118 watching and 57 likes. Guys, smash that like button. Share it out on your social media, and should you feel so inclined, please consider hitting up that Streamlabs. It is greatly, greatly appreciated. Skip. There we go.
You love nature. No offense. There's no other reason to live in Maine. It's cold. The taxes are high. There's not a lot of jobs. I think your family's company is still the biggest private sector employer in the state of Maine, or one of them anyway. Yes. And so if you're in Maine and you just decide to live there, and we still don't have internal passports yet, so you could leave if you wanted, you're there because you love nature. And that really is the primary reason. And no family has done more to celebrate the natural resources, the nature of Maine than the Bean family. And L.L. Bean, the founder of the company, was above all, obviously a great businessman, but truly a great sportsman. And his book about hunting and fishing in Maine, 80 years after he wrote it, I just reread it recently, is still not just the most reliable guide to the blood sports in Maine, but to
blood sports,
God's creation. There's people who love.
Oh shit, we are 28-ish% to goal. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you very much.
Of the outdoors are making a pretty profound statement, I think. And it's a simple one, which is, no, I didn't create this. No, I'm not capable of creating this. This is something much bigger than human hands could design or build. And therefore, it's the most beautiful thing. And so that company really has, I think, done a great service. And Linda Bean has gone on to create, I think, one of the greatest companies in Maine. Linda Bean sells lobster. You may not know that. We live in the part of Maine. I've never eaten lobster in 50 years in our county because there is no lobster in Oxford County, Maine. It's just macaroni and cheese and fentanyl, and that's it. So people are like, oh, you're in Maine. You must eat a lot of lobster. Nope, never. Our local delicacy is called the Fig Newton. Have you guys heard of that? Our only store is the gas station. That's what they sell. Generic cigarettes.
I do love a Fig Newton.
Allen's Coffee Brandy, Fig Newtons. And I quit the first two, so I'm on the Fig Newton program. So when my kids visit, and they, of course, want to eat lobster, but the only lobster available is in Portland and sold by Linda Bean, and it's, no offense, it's expensive. So I don't give my kids money. The only money I give my 4 children is when they leave and they go back to Portland to fly home, I give them $40 to buy your lobster, which really is like the best. I've got a little lobster welfare program going on in my family. Anyway, thank you for everything. And thank you to ISI for having me. As Johnny said, I've employed, I don't know how many ISI kids I've employed, a lot. And they're all smart, and more than that, they're all interesting. I think we underrate just how boring identity politics is. I mean, obviously it's an attack on Western civilization, but on a more prosaic level, it's just very tiresome. Because really, when you're talking about identity politics, what are you talking about? You.
Mm-hmm.
And as my wife often points out, there's nothing
90% of people who are pedantic on identity politics are usually the most self-centered or self-flagellating people on the fucking face of the earth. Like, take your pick. Vosh, Hassan, these cats, self-centered, self-flagellating. That's all they want to talk about is identity politics. Tim Pool. You see where I'm going with this?
Nothing more boring than you. Talking about yourself is, well, it was the most offensive thing you could do in the world that I grew up in. When my father would check our thank you notes as children, and we had a pretty undisciplined household growing up. I grew up alone with my dad, but the one thing that was very disciplined was thank you notes after Christmas, and he would come in and inspect our thank you notes, and if you began more than one sentence with the word I, he made you rewrite it. And he would always say, oh, it's about you? Really? You gave the president? I don't think that you did. I think
Columbus can be pretty shitty in some places, but as far as I know, it's kind of higher end.
for the person who gave it to you. So why don't you talk about them? And suddenly we have an entire country where, and I mean entire country, where our politics, our literature, our art is all based on me talking about me. It is narcissism at scale, and it's yawn-inducing above all. And the kids that we've had from ISI are interested in something beyond themselves, like Western civilization and the ideas that formed it and the faith that formed it. And so they're super interesting to talk to. You know, I don't fall asleep. And at my advanced age of 54, like I don't like young people that much, being honest. And because, you know, old people don't like young people as much, right? But mostly don't like them because it's not interesting. They are all interesting. They have something to say. They're engaged in the ideas. And so it's been a thrill to have them. So I was thinking about what to say, and you know, I could go and do my normal litany of how terrible things are, but that's not necessary in a room like this because everyone already knows. The question is, how did this happen so quickly? And I was thinking today, I was pulling in a Bryant Pond in my truck with my dogs this morning. I was thinking, it wasn't even 20 years ago I got fired, well, the first time, one of many times now. And I had 4 little kids in school, and I had to make money, and so I went on the road giving speeches. And my debate partner for much of those years was a guy called James Carville, who, you remember James Carville, ran the Clinton campaign in '92, large, bald, reptilian, demented guy from Louisiana. Stephanie, speak, man! I gotta say one thing, by the way. Wilmington is one of my favorite places in the world. And I don't know how many people I know who are from here, but I show up here and I got like 20 texts, come stay with me. It's like the densest collection of nice people, I think, of any place in the world. And no, it's true. My daughter is actually dating a boy from Wilmington, and so all of my children come down for, what is it, your spring party and your winter party? Do I have that correct? Whatever. Wilmington gossip suffuses my dinner table. Anyway, I go on the road with James Carville, and he used to do this routine about how he was a liberal, but liberals were kind of nuts. You know, he'd be speaking to business groups or Wall Street before they all went crazy. And they were sort of all kind of sensible center-right money people. And Carville was a representative of the Democratic Party, which at the time they kind of distrusted. This is pre-Obama. And he would always say, my party's crazy. Next thing you know, we're going to have a transgender amendment. And people would always kind of like, stop. What the hell could that be? And I remember some speech, J.P. Morgan's speech in Napa, and somebody said, what's a transgender amendment? He goes, how the hell do I know? But it's something the liberals would propose. And everyone laughed like that was so prima facie insane, a transgender amendment. Well, now, I don't think there's a spending bill that doesn't have a transgender amendment attached to it. And that wasn't that long ago. It happened so fast. I could give you 1,000 other examples of how American society has changed almost overnight. I was in Abu Dhabi last week. And
imagine if he was still there. Jesus Christ. Faustonia, you're sitting strong, buddy.
Just being honest, it's like a freer society than ours. You can say, unless you're an Islamic extremist, in which case, shut up or be beheaded. Other than that, you can kind of say what you want. And it's true. I was just there. They have a bigger and more explicitly Christian Christmas program in Abu Dhabi than they have in New York. If you told me 20 years ago, if you really want to taste freedom, go to the Gulf. Go to some primitive theocracy. Obviously it would have been like the transgender amendment. I would have laughed derisively. Like, that's nuts. So the question is, how did that happen? And so fast. And it happened for 2 reasons, really. One is that only one side in the revolution recognized that it was a revolution. The other side had no idea. They're like, things are getting a little flaky. First they banned smoking on airplanes. The next thing you know, they're giving you medicine you don't want. Like, they just couldn't kind of see that as part of the same continuum, though it is, honestly. One side saw these changes for what they were, which were a revolution. Let's completely change American society from the bottom to the top. Let's eliminate any sense of shared culture or history. Let's atomize the country to the point where there's no viable opposition to what we're doing. And then once we've done that, let's addle everyone with prescription drugs. Let's encourage them to be unhealthy and unmarried and childless. And then,
or we could not do that. We could just not do that. My bank said no. Oof. That's right, chat. Read them and weep. Knock me off. I friggin' dare ya.
We can kind of do whatever we want. And no one sort of, on the other side, which is not just the right, by the way, it's not just I think the academic right, which is small and mostly in this room, understood what was going on. But the vast bulk of everyone else, which would include like a lot of Democrats and just like normal people who aren't that interested in revolution or at all interested in revolution, who at best want incremental change, they had no idea what was happening. So there's that. It's important to understand the moment that you're in, and it cuts against the very core of human nature to understand it, because I am totally convinced at my age that denial is the most powerful of all human instincts. I'm serious. I mean, honestly, I was 22 years ago, next month, I was in a plane that crashed, amazingly, in the Middle East, flying from Peshawar, Pakistan. The Khyber Pass was right after 9/11. I was going over to cover the Taliban, and something happened in the cargo hold, and we went down in the sand dune in Dubai. Obviously, I survived, but it was a Pakistan International Airways flight, and the thing that changed my life about that experience was...
That's terrifying. Holy shit.
Something happened horrible to the plane. Like there was an explosion in the cargo hold, some debate about what it was, but it happened. And the plane starts dropping, and the wing appears to detach, the right wing, and the plane is like struggling for altitude and going up, gunning the engines and sideways. It's like 3 a.m. over the Arabian Sea. People are freaking out on the plane. Every person on that plane thought we're going to die, very much including me. I had 3 little kids. I was half drunk, which makes it worse. And we finally come in kind of sideways into the sand dune. The plane's on its side, and I'm in the first seat on the plane. It's a big double-aisle Airbus. And I just had one thought, which is I'm getting off the plane. And it's, totally dark, and you can see burning from the wing, so it's like it is time to depart the plane. So I hop up, and this male flight attendant stands right in front of me and goes, "Sit down, everything is fine, everything is fine." And that's a verbatim quote, "Everything is fine." It was so demonstrably unfine, I can't even begin to describe how unfine it was. And I think just out of pure panic, I ignored the guy, and I opened the door and the slide went up, and I jumped into darkness with 4 other Westerners in the front. Everyone in the back, though, they were like, "Oh, everything's fine." And I thought, I've brooded on that for over 20 years. Like, why?
I don't think I'd be able to let that go super easy. I think that would be something I just kind of sit on for a while going, is it fine? This plane's falling apart while I'm flying it. Is it fine?
He claimed everything was fine. The pilots, by the way, went right out the front windows. Well, they did. Oh, absolutely. Like, whatever. Good luck, guys. And I think he just couldn't metabolize the change. It was so awful. He just could not admit what was happening right there in front of everybody. This really bothered me all these years, despite the fact it wound up fine for me. By the way, the plane is now a dive site off the Burj Hotel in Dubai. You can swim through it. Someday I will. But then last year I read the biography, which I would recommend to everyone in this room, of Peter Wrangel, who was the leader of the revolutionary white forces during the Russian Revolution, the Civil War, rather, that came after the revolution. And he was a Baltic German living in Russia and a general, worked for the Tsar. The war ends, or Russia ceases its hostilities with Germany. He comes back to St. Petersburg, and the country's in complete chaos. And the Bolsheviks have decided that it's discontent within the army that we need to inflame, and we need to get the army. I don't know if this sounds familiar to anyone here, but get the guns, and the people who wield the guns. We need them. So the first thing...
Do we need them?
...thing to do is destroy all discipline in the Tsar's army, complete. So Peter Wrangel's just been on the front for 4 years. He comes back into St. Petersburg, totally civilized city, 2-hour drive from Helsinki. I mean, it is Europe, okay? Whatever anyone tells you. And he's wandering through, and soldiers are going crazy in the streets. And they're raping women. They're stealing at gunpoint. Soldiers in uniform in a monarchy which had not had any behavior like this at all. And Peter Wrangel just can't even believe it. These are his soldiers. He's a general. And so he's completely freaked out, and he goes into a movie theater, and everyone in the movie theater is completely absorbed in the movie. Like there's no revolution happening outside. And Peter Wrangel thinks these people are insane. So he goes back, he's like, I gotta get to Moscow. So he takes the train to Moscow. I have to tell the Tsar, this country's falling apart. He's very close to the Romanovs, the family. You should read this. It's just out in English translation in the last 3
The Romanov with like the Black Widow or something. Talking about those Romanovs or something.
years. It's an unbelievable book, lost to history until recently to English speakers. So he goes back to Moscow, and he's close to the Romanovs. And so he goes into the imperial court, and he knows all the relatives, and there are millions of them, hangers-on. And he notices about 80% of the women in the Romanov family are wearing red ribbons in solidarity with the Bolsheviks, who wound up, of course we know how it ends, murdering them in the basement at dawn. So, wait, what? Peter Wrangel says, how is it that this country is being devoured by a violent revolution, and the people who can afford movie tickets, that is kind of our middle class, are refusing even to acknowledge that it's happening, and the ruling class against whom it is aimed are sympathizing with it. And if this doesn't remind you of BLM, I don't know what does.
That is a really fucking good comparison. I hope he knows what he just said there. That is a great comparison. The ruling class supporting BLM are the same people who want to destroy them. It's fucking hilarious.
I'm reading this on my porch like midnight. I couldn't go to sleep. I was like, wait, I live in that country. That's happening now. This is a revolution. Its aim is to hurt you. Yes, that would include physically in the end. Sorry. If someone tells you you're not allowed to speak, if someone tells you your children are not your children, okay, these are not ideological differences. This is not, oh, I prefer, this capital gains rate. These are totalitarian measures that treat you as non-human. Human beings, free citizens, get to say what they think. Slaves must be quiet. That's the distinction. So all this like, oh, it's in the First Amendment. No. Yeah, it precedes the First Amendment. As our founding documents make clear, these are natural rights that distinguish the citizen from the slave, the human from the subhuman. We can't consider slaves fully human or we wouldn't enslave them. So anyone treating you as a slave considers you less than human. People don't pause to consider the implications of this. If someone says to you, I have a right to make your children hate you, or to say weird, creepy sex stuff to your kids, what's a valid response to that?
No.
I'm calling for applying natural law to American life. And if you refuse to do that, what happens? Well, we're watching what happens. They become increasingly aggressive. The aims are exactly like the means, totalitarian. Period. This is not a debate. They don't want a debate. They've said that explicitly, they don't want a debate. So I really think that we should begin to see this for what it is, which is a very big deal on which all depends, not just our republic, but like your family.
What are the kids' schools like? It's fine from what I can tell. No real weird stuff.
And I'm not calling for stockpiling ammo, though. I mean, no one ever went broke doing that, I can say. Maybe some have, but they'll get it back in the end. It's a good investment.
Fair enough.
What I'm calling for is approaching this moment with the seriousness that it both deserves and requires. So that you read that beautiful letter from, was it Lieutenant Blue? After whom a spectacularly dysfunctional public high school in Washington, D.C. is named, I should tell you. Poor guy, that's his legacy. Boys' room shootings. But
it's better than nothing.
Read that, and you realize a couple of things. One, this man was not lying to himself. He knew that everything hung in the balance. He was in the middle of a civil war, and he wasn't pretending otherwise. I mean, it was literally a civil war, but he knew that it was. It's one thing to be in a civil war. It's another thing to admit it. And he did admit it, okay? The second thing was his grave seriousness. This man foretells his own death in that letter.
Ugh.
I can feel it. I'm about to die. Not an inkling of self-pity at all. Not even any, if I thought I was going to die, I would write the world's treacliest letter to my wife. You're so great. He said, I'd rather die than be dishonored. He says that in the letter.
Whoa.
This is a very serious person, maybe even a little self-serious, actually. And we're not prepared for self-seriousness. Because we all, at least if you're my age, grew up in a world where self-serious.
I think that's pretty accurate. We're probably not ready for super serious shit like that. I don't know.
Or even seriousness itself was the gravest of all sins. Taking yourself too seriously. You have no ironic detachment. You can't laugh at yourself. You can't laugh at the moment. Well,
Who all do we got still hanging out, chat? Let me see a roll call.
Big on ironic detachment. I try. I'm big on humor. I really hope, that when I get the diagnosis, that I'll be man enough to joke about it. I really do hope that. On the other hand, it's not just about me and whether I can show coolness under pressure or tell a joke.
There we go. What up, peeps?
Facing stage 4. It's bigger than that. It's about
Frankenbean said I'm not here. Damn.
My children and the grandchildren I fervently hope to have.
Well, if Frankenbeans ain't here, I guess we could just end the show now.
And their lives require...
Shit, y'all fucking just lurking? God damn. You guys need to start saying more shit in the chat, Doomhammer. Jesus Christ, Skeptical, Saiyan Wizard, Brian, all you fucks.
Me to be a little more serious than the world I was raised in, which was honestly not serious at all. It was a very decadent world. I didn't recognize that at the time. Sort of well-educated, upper-income America. Very decadent, actually. Well, who am I to judge? Well, on the one hand, okay. Who am I to declare myself better than someone else? I'm with that to this day.
But I have to feed my husband. You can type and open your legs at the same time. It's real easy. Oh, I forgot I had that. Nunya, 39 months resubscribed. I may do some twitchy stuff tomorrow, artificial dinner theater. Miss Sin will be on that. I'll be there. I'm going to be quiet because I got to run the board. But yeah, I may do some twitchy things tomorrow.
I don't think.
And thank you, Nunya. I'll message him real quick.
I'm better than anyone else, and actually I've got a lot of evidence that I'm not. On the other hand, it is for me to judge whether something is good for my country and my children. That is my duty to judge. And not to make light of it, but to see it for what it is, which is the choice between life or death, literally. And so here's how I think we should respond. First, by taking stock of ourselves. I mean, are we actually living lives
That was a nice little shin kick to Fustonia, too.
that prepare us for whatever is coming next? And here's how you know this is like a process that's imminent.
Uh-oh. I think my computer's having a stroke. Uh-oh. Can you guys hear me? Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Oh, no. Looks like everything just clicked back on. That was weird. I gotta figure out what the fuck is going on with this computer, man. My, my top 3 things on my fucking task manager is Windows Desktop Manager, System, and WMI Provider Host. Like, I don't know how to fix it. And it's eating up. All 3 of them are very high power usage, very high VRAM, and CPU usage. And no matter how much I update, no matter what I do, it just doesn't fix it. I don't know if that's an issue with my RAM sticks. I don't know if it's an issue with my motherboard or what, but whatever it is, I'm gonna have to figure something out because I got to get new fucking tires tomorrow. So I'm not going to have anything left to figure it out.
And not far away. We have a presidential race that's on the books. And I mean, I could go on for hours about that. The truth is, I don't know what's going to happen, and that's kind of the point. But
my vehicle kind of takes precedent over my computer.
Life looking at the stuff, making predictions, winning bets, winning a couple pretty good vacations on making obvious bets about who's going to win. Like, no, Al Gore's not going to be president. Look at the guy. I won a lot of money on that. This election, we have a president who's, well...
And what's even weirder is the computer that's doing it is the studio computer. And the one at home just isn't doing it. It's just my studio computer.
I'm not being mean, but is senile. That's just true. And I feel mean every time I say that, but it's true. And who is literally losing to a candidate who's been indicted 4 times on 91 felony counts.
Oof.
Donald Trump has been indicted 4 times. Now, I think if you look at the counts, and I'm not here to flack for Trump, mixed feelings about Trump, but I'm just being honest. If you spend a day reading it, it's ridiculous. So they've done everything they can by legal means, which are, in fact, extra legal means, if we're being totally honest, completely third world stuff, to take the opponent out of the race, and they're still losing. So, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. This is not going to be a race between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. I would bet my beloved fishing camp in Maine that is not going to happen. That's not going to happen. So what will happen? Well, I don't know. One of like 400 distinct other possibilities?
This computer's a pre-built. I got it during the scamdemic, and it was a pre-built one from Micro Center. Valine picked it out, so I assume all the components in there are pretty good together.
I mean, I just can't even, pick one. By the way, if it's Gavin Newsom, we all should be very, very concerned. That guy's scary, and I mean it. I mean it, scary. Yeah, but that's a whole separate conversation. But the point is, this will be forced. These issues will be forced soon, like in a year. And the road from here to November of 2024 is going to be filled with developments nobody in this room could foresee. I can promise you that. So it's about to get very serious, for sure. It's only leadership of the world at stake, which is also, by the way, we now know the most lucrative possible political franchise in human history. So everything's at stake. What wouldn't they do? What haven't they done? What might they do next? Let your imagination.
That's a great question. What wouldn't they do? That is what I want. WMI host taking up a huge chunk of CPU. Oop. WMI taking a huge chunk of CPU may be a sign of infection. May want to run some boost scans on safe mode, tinkering when you have downtime. That's a good idea. By the way, thanks again. I don't know if you saw my message for the resub, Nunya. I'm going to do my best to do a Twitch time tomorrow.
Imagination run wild. So the question, the only one that you can answer is, how will you prepare yourself for that? And because that really is the only question. And I mean, my answers to that in my own life, I'll tell you what I think. One,
is there a way to prepare yourself for that, for whatever they want to do? I don't know. They just kind of pull shit out of left field. Daralow, another dono unlocked. I hope it's a good one. Can't make us not lurk. God, that is super lurky shit, Nunya. That is super lurky shit. Thank you. And Daralow, it's X-Files. Of course it's a good one. It's X-Files. I should check the parts when you get a chance. Some people forget to remove protective film, causing overheating. I don't think it's overheating. I'll put my hand on the thing right now, and I'm not feeling any super warm spots. It's possible, though. It's possible.
Be a little bit more serious. You know, like, take this seriously. Much as you want to retreat and pretend everything is fine, sit down. It's not.
Do you reckon you guys, well, what do you mean by use guys? We'll do another 5-hour Halloween extravaganza. We could drum up some hype, make a stream goal, something outlandish, maybe with some games. Like how well do you know, son? Who do you mean by use guys?
Fine. Okay? 2, you know, maybe if you look across at the people you despise, the small group of people running this country, it is small. It does not represent most people in America. It doesn't represent anything close to a majority at all. Again, just to restate, Donald Trump, who is hated as a blood enemy by over 40% of the population, and who's been attacked in ways that no political figure's ever been attacked in the West, is beating the incumbent president, okay? I'm not sure that's entirely...
Oh, me and Shelly, I'm sure we could work something out. I'm sure we could do something. Halloween is on the 31st. That's a Tuesday. Maybe I could switch around to do the girl stream Tuesday. I don't know. I'll have to do some thinking on it.
Early an endorsement of Trump, to some extent it is, and his empathy, that's real. But it's also a sign of revulsion, deep dissatisfaction with what we're doing. So most people are not on board with this. But the people who are responsible for it are the most dishonest, the most ruthless, the most anti-human group I've ever dealt with. And I spent 35 years living in Washington. I don't even recognize these people and what they're doing. I really don't. It's so dark. They're doing things that can't even, on an academic level, conceivably help the United States or the population that lives here. Letting in 7 million people from the poorest countries in the world illegally, and then immediately putting them all on public benefits. I mean, that right there will destroy the country. And they did that on purpose. So these are really, really dark people, the darkest. So I need to be the opposite of that. And I'm not a super good person. The last thing I would do is claim to be. But this is the...
I think that takes some hardcore honesty to turn around and go, you know what? Honestly, I don't think I'm a good person. And I've never made any compunction about it. I've said this many times. I really don't think I'm a good person. I'm selfish. I'm hard to deal with. I can be an asshole. I'm crazy. I don't think I'm a good person. I try my best to do right by other people. But I think people who can be honest about that, and especially people who go, you know what, I think I'm dumb. I have a lot to learn. I think that's very important. Not to like put yourself down, but to be honest about where you are and what you feel in your life.
Moment to try a little harder to be a little bit better. This is not the moment to be drunk all the time. This is not the moment to tell lies. As they go lower, go higher. And there are many reasons for this. And one is spiritual. Let's be totally honest. I do think this is a spiritual battle. There's no political explanation for it whatsoever. But one other reason is for the way that you feel about yourself. When you're honest, you are proud of yourself. When you're honest, you are strong. When you lie, you become weak. That is true. Tell a lie, you become weak. Why do you lie? Because you're hiding.
I heard a really good quote earlier today. Every lie you tell incurs a debt to the truth. That's good. That is really good. I'm pretty sure that's from that fucking Chernobyl show. What up, Drunksley? What up?
Something. because you believe that the people around you knew what you really thought or said or did, they would think less of you. That diminishes you. Your power ebbs when you lie. Tell the truth. Live like a decent person. Try. I mean, you really feel like Cotton Mather just saying that out loud. It sounds so radical, but it's not. And gather your family to you in a real way. If you've got a dispute with a sibling or a parent or a child or the person who shares your bed, do your best to make it better. Spend less time on Twitter. Spend more time talking to your wife. I mean it. Strengthen the core. And the core is your family. It's the orbit right around you. I believe very, very strongly, more than almost anything, in the concentric circle theory of love, which is when you love people and you help them, either with your time or your empathy or your advice or your money, it should begin at the closest level to you. So I'm not sending a single dollar for mosquito nets in Congo until my wife is happy with me. Yeah. I mean it. I mean it. And I'm not going to worry about the children until my 4 children are in a good place and until I've called them every single day.
This is a very good point, actually. I'm not super interested. I'm paraphrasing here, of course. I'm not super interested in making sure everybody else is good until I know for a fact I am good. That's based. Where's Baba Yaga? I don't know.
And I'm not giving any more money to the Episcopal Church until my housekeeper gets a new car. I mean it. She's my housekeeper. She's cleaning my toilets. I'm serious. And so think of yourself, particularly for the head of household, as not in an egotistical way, but in a very practical way. Like it all radiates out from you. Like make sure that the in-close relationships are good. Spend all your time on that until they are. And in so doing, you become stronger, your family becomes stronger, and I'm using family in a very loose sense because a lot of people don't have at this point, and this is a product of policy, intentional, don't have nuclear families. I'm so blessed to have one, but many people who I love don't, including my own children. But your family and the people that you have real relationships with. And what's a real relationship? A real relationship, a fake relationship is when you're talking to someone and you tell the truth about other people. Oh, she's such a bitch. Oh, we're close. Okay. No, that's a fake, that's a relationship you have with your hairdresser, okay?
Oh, and by the way, we're like 25% to goal. If you guys want to have some fake relationships with me or each other, whatever. I had a good shill in my mind, but it fell apart coming out of my mouth. Unlock a new dono.
It's a fake relationship. A real relationship is when you tell the truth about yourself. That's the acid test. Do I have a real relationship with this person? Am I willing to admit who I really am? And it's those relationships you strengthen. And the more you do, the stronger you get. So that's the first thing. Take stock of your own life. Try to be virtuous. I know it sounds so dopey. I'm way too Episcopalian to even have these conversations, but it's real. Live in a way that you're proud of. And the prouder you are of it, the less they're going to mess with you. You stand a little tall. Well, you can't mess with me. I got my household squared away. Back off. Touch my kids and get hurt. That's how people with self-respect behave. People with no self-respect are all like, I don't know. The therapist said maybe. What? Who's the
My goal by the end of the month is to unlock the new comma. And it's dope, and Drunkle, if you're out there, it is a lich. That's the only hint I'll give. It's a lich, but it's much different than last year's lich.
Get out of here, you freak.
Yeah, freak.
You're a therapist? Be gone. Have you dealt with them? You know what I'm talking about? The school people, well, the school therapist. First of all, you shouldn't have a therapist, weirdo. Anyway.
I mean, schools have kind of always had counselors.
Whatever, don't even get me going. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing, and I'll stop with this because now I'm really wound up. And Johnny's going to come in, we're going to have like a civilized, more academic conversation. But the second thing is be brave. I mean, it's actually not that complicated. I think about all the people I admire, and there are so many. And, like a lot of people who like to read a lot, I have a fetish for smart people. Oh, he's so smart. It's like a massive compliment.
Not that lich. Not that lich. A different one. Taroni.
He's so smart. Oh, he's so smart. I can promise you, after spending 35 years living among valedictorians with HBS degrees, immaterial. The people I admire are not the smartest. Some of them are. I think most of my friends are smart. All my kids are smart. My wife's smart. Great. My dogs are stupid.
That's true. Eve's retarded.
Wonderful, wonderful people. I mean that. Intelligence.
Are you guys saving for a house? I plan to remodel. So yes and no. Yes, planning to save, but no, in that even with the help from Luna in chat, my brother and I had to shoulder pretty much all of the responsibility for Mom's funeral earlier this year. So yes, I would like to start saving for a house. So I have a list of things that I just want. LASIK is on that list, but that's kind of been pushed down. A camper to take the kids camping, and a house is on that list. Campers and LASIK are all pretty cheap. LASIK is like 37 was the last I was quoted for. Campers are about 4,000. Don't be a camper douche. Dude, half of the year here, it's under 50 degrees. I'm gonna be a camper douche. But yes, I do want to save for a house, and I am trying to, but that all got depleted earlier this year. So yes and no.
Intelligence is not the measure. It's not the measure of your moral value, and it's also not, and this is an insight that came to me later.
And it's just been shit after shit after shit. I've been able to stash a little to the side, but I got to get work done to my truck. My check engine light keeps coming on, and I need new tires, so that's going to be $700. That's just going to get thrown into the wind. So yes, but it's hard to get off that 0 point for right now.
In life, it's not a measure, a predictive measure of your effectiveness. Can't, if you gave IQ tests, which by the way, sorry guys, are real, to a class of 6th graders and then followed them longitudinally, this has been done actually, like how'd they do? I'm the smartest kid, probably working at Jiffy Lube, died of a drug OD. Like that's not actually a predictor of success. I'll tell you what is, bravery. And it's a combination of factors, but the person who's brave wins, period. And in a moment like this, the stakes are higher. It's not just a matter of like being the next guy who invents something cool and then figures out a way to sell it. No, it's do you want your children to be able to live here? Do you want to have grandchildren at all? And if you're not brave, that won't happen. And that's very clear at this point. And I could bore you with a lot of dark stats, but I'm not going to because you know them. And so be brave. And by the way,
tire prices suck right now. I'm lucky enough that about a year and a half ago, I had to get new tires, and they were about $500. The price of tires have not gone up. Gas prices have been, at least here, steadily going down. We're starting to dip under $3 in some places, which I am incredibly grateful for, because I drive a fucking lot. So it's something. It's always something. My credit card bills, because I had to take a cash advance out on some of the stuff for the funeral, have been insane. So, it is what it is. It is what it is. And it's just nothing to do about it. Just got to keep trudging on.
There's nothing easier. The key to being brave is brooding about death. This is just true, I believe. The key to being brave is brooding about death. All anxiety and all fear stems from the most basic of all fear.
I am worried, and I kind of don't even want to put it into the air as an option. But I'm worried that I might have to get 4 new tires because they don't make the tires that I have. So I don't know. If they say I'm going to have to get 4 new tires, I'm going to be fucked.
Which is the fear of death, which is inborn. You feel it from the moment you arrive because you know it's going to end on some level. My deepest child on our 5th birthday burst into tears, and I said, why? All my other more shallow children were psyched for the cake. My deep child said, well, I don't want it to end. And I said, what? My life. I was like, whoa. I could drown in these waters. They're too deep. I did start crying. Yes, I did. Okay, I'll admit it. But anyway.
Yeah.
But whether we articulate it or not, that is the root of all anxiety. And so you need to focus on that. And I grew up in a place when I was a kid called La Jolla, California, which had a lot of, I know someone just snickered. Okay, got it. Yes, I know. Has a lot going for it. It's beautiful and all that. But in retrospect, the one thing that made it a really bad place actually to grow up and to live, and why I don't visit anymore, is there was only one taboo in La Jolla and in all kind of affluent towns like La Jolla in the West, which is death. It's like the one thing you could not talk about. I mean, people had freaky sex situations in La Jolla that would, even in Wilmington, you'd be shocked by, and I'm serious, okay? It's a little inside joke for people from Wilmington. Oh, anyway, sorry. But you would be, like, nothing was judged. Like, well, I ended up, you know, marrying the babysitter, but then I brought the massage therapist in for some polygamy, and people were like, oh, that's cool, really? Yeah, no problem. No,
What?
no judgment whatsoever.
You shouldn't have to unless it's a full-time four-wheel drive, all-wheel drive. Okay, story time. So last time I brought my truck into this place, I think I told the story. They tried to put new tires on it without my consent. And when they did that, they rotated the tires. I said, I don't have the fucking money for this right now. I cannot get it. When they rotated the tires, they put the bad tires off of the drivetrain. So my drivetrain has been only running on the older new tires I got 18 months ago. So that might have just fucking whittled it the hell down. I don't know.
None. The one thing you couldn't do was talk about dying or any of its attendant symptoms like aging. No aging. And if you got old enough and your age was visible enough, you had to go to Palm Springs. You had to, no, I'm serious. It was our equivalent of putting you on the ice floe. Okay.
I do have a four-wheel drive truck, though.
Hey, like the Inuit do. Sorry, you're all you just, you know, and it's like, whatever happened to Mrs. So-and-so?
Let's do a penny test. That's if the tread goes over Lincoln's head, isn't it?
I don't know. She was in her 450 SLC just driving east. Never saw her again, and she's in Palm Desert at Thunderbird or whatever, and now she, you know, you don't know. But the one thing you could never say about Mrs. So-and-so is she died like we all will. Totally.
Yeah, I'm sure I have a penny somewhere. And I'll do that when I go outside.
Not acceptable. And as a result of that, beneath, and if those of you who've lived there or know the area or any town like that, I doubt Aspen or Jackson are any different, right? The one thing about those towns is the anxiety level is crazy high. And that's why everyone's on benzos. Or like climbing to the top of Snow King manically or whatever, doing so much cardio that they calm down. I'm not joking. Anyone familiar with the culture I'm talking about? The white wine, now Casamigos.
Cardio doesn't calm me down. It just makes me tired. And I don't like it. I don't like cardio.
Change, but whatever, same idea. There's a crazy amount of anxiety because no one can acknowledge the core truth of life, which is that it ends. And any attempt to even talk about this or engage in a religious discussion, which by definition implies death and powerlessness, was rejected as like repulsive and an attack. And it made everyone crazy, and it made them cowards. That's true, it made them cowards. So
I hate it. I still do it, but I hate it.
As long as you're afraid of that, you're not going to be very effective fighting against people who really are serving a cause they believe is larger than themselves. Now, I think it's Satan or whatever you call it, but it doesn't matter what I think. They believe they are acting on behalf of something larger than themselves, the revolution. And if you're just like, make it go away, I don't want to be uncomfortable, you're going to lose. And the consequences are going to be horrible. Probably not for anyone in this room, because like everyone here is kind of higher income and older like me, but certainly for your kids. There's like no chance they'll prosper in a country like that. There's no chance. And your grandkids, I mean, they'll just be like texting each other, where can we move? Where can we move? Oh, nowhere. So it's essential not to be afraid to die. And once you decide, I'm really not afraid to die, nothing scares you. Like, what's scary at that point?
We did react to this part, but not the whole speech. This was just put up a couple of days ago. So it's nice to kind of have the context for it. But that's a good point. If you're not afraid to die, what scares you? I'm not afraid to die. I'm afraid I have a hernia. I either have a hernia or I have a really fucking floral bruise about to bloom through my fucking crotch because I got hit. And it was one of those things where I got hit. I'm like, oh. I'm worried about that, but I don't know. Am I afraid to die? I think so. I think I'm afraid to die, yeah.
Bring it on. Oh, you're going to criticize me on Facebook. You're going to bring suit against me. You're going to arrest me. You're going to kill me. So what? Go ahead. And I would make two arguments, and I'll stop with this because now I'm really getting crazy, but I mean it. I would make two arguments on behalf of not being afraid of death. And the first is just an obvious mechanistic argument that I think everyone, regardless of religious faith, can understand, which is you're going to anyway, and it's going to be horrible. So, like, why not? You're playing with the house money. And I would recommend one of the greatest essays I've ever read was by George Orwell, written in as part of a book he wrote called Down and Out in Paris and London. But
I had a hernia a long time ago. This is my first time with anything that might be considered a hernia. But it's just the timing of it, because I got hit there, and then like a day later, there's a lump, and it hurts, and it looks like it's starting to bruise. But Miss Sin jokingly was like, "Nah, you got a hernia." I'm like, "Oh shit, I think I have a hernia."
winds up in a hospital in Paris in the 30s during the Depression with tuberculosis. George Orwell was a man of famous and proven physical courage. He was shot in the throat by a sniper standing guard during the Spanish Civil War on the wrong side, unfortunately, but whatever, he was trying. And didn't mention it in his diary. Didn't mention it in his diary. I mean, this is a man who had, went to Eton, in 1913, grew up rough in the way that the British upper classes used to raise their boys, in a martial way, actually.
A hernia pops out a little bit. It's a lump, but it could be a fucking hell of a bruise, or it could be a hernia. I don't know. I'm pooping fine. No problems doing that shit. Nice.
And he winds up in this hospital for the indigent, and he's in a huge bay, like the size of this room, filled with metal cots, and people around him are dying. But they're not dying of anything interesting.
It's not a worst case scenario. I have a hernia. I have to get surgery. That's fine. Sin has hemorrhage. No, it's not. Don't bell yourself. I made a pun about poop. I can bell that. It's not the surgery I'm worried about. It's the fucking downtime. See, like, was it like I was a little manic earlier. Like 2 weeks to 4 weeks? I can't go to the gym? I can't do anything like that? Fuck.
They haven't been shot in the throat by a sniper with 8mm rounds around. They're dying of, like, diarrhea.
It was a shitty pun. The general rule of hernias is if you have one. I don't know. If it's a hernia, you can push into the hole. Okay, hold on. No, that's not moving. That's not moving. Ow. No. I can't push anything.
Yeah. And
I think the swelling went down. I put a cold compress on it earlier.
The flu. And he describes in this wonderful essay how horrible it is. And he has this line there. He says, there's so many tears shed for guys who die.
But it happened, I think, Sunday, and yesterday was super fucking sore. Today, it's worse. But, like, I'm starting to see the blue vein breaks. So I think it's a bruise. I'm like 80% sure it's a bruise, but Miss Sin freaked me the fuck out.
During the Great War, which is only 10 years before, 20 years before, going over the top of the trench and getting mowed down by a 50 cal. And he goes, that's very sad. Obviously, he grew up in a world where all the men were killed that way. But he goes, that's kind of nothing compared to the way the people around me are dying. Like, it's going to be bad no matter what. You might as well die with your shoes on doing something you believe in. That was Orwell's.
It's a bruise. It sounds like a deep bruise. It was horrific. There was no mistaking something was wrong. Yeah, this is just mildly uncomfortable. I would say. It's rather uncomfortable.
Conclusion.
Hernias are unbelievably painful. I wouldn't even call it painful. It's just uncomfortable. And like, I was at the gym and shit today, and no, it was fine.
In the end, he died of tuberculosis alone. But whatever, he didn't get to choose. None of us do get to choose.
If I sit a certain way that's like pulling or pushing on my groin muscle, it's uncomfortable, but I wouldn't say it hurts. Hurts if you push on it, though.
But we can have the mindset that frees us from the anxiety over something that we can't change, that's going to happen, and
If you went to the gym, you do not have a hernia. I waited like 2 days to go to the hospital after I had a stroke.
Best, we can imbue it with meaning. That's the point. That's the choice we have. We're going to die. Should it mean something? Should our life mean something? That's the only choice we get to make. The rest of it is out of our hands. And the second point I would make is something that I've come to very
I've never had any pain from hernias. If it's a mild pain, it isn't a hernia. They're incredibly painful. Thanks, guys. Very helpful.
slowly over many years. But I mean, let's just be totally real.
Speaking of fucking unbelievably funny shit, did you see the Photoshop Destiny tweeted out earlier today? Every single movement results in unbearable pain if you have a hernia. Yeah, no, I was doing pull downs and rows fine today, so look at this. The caption is when you forget to change your work uniform before stream. It's obviously Photoshop, but it's fucking hilarious. And he got in a lot of shit for this.
Religion stuff, basically true. It's basically true. It is. And this is the only civilization that I'm aware of in all human history, and I mean the West post-war, so the last 80 years in the Anglosphere and Western Europe, is the only civilization in history that has proceeded on any other assumption but there is a god or gods. It's like, that's a brand new thing. It turns out, actually,
I know, right? Hassan having a bad take is unheard of.
Spoiler alert, it doesn't work. Okay. It doesn't work at all.
I'll just wait a few days. If the swelling doesn't go down, maybe next week or something, end of the month, if the swelling doesn't go down, maybe I'll go get it checked out. We'll see. It probably is just a bruise.
Something about the atomic bomb going off, in my opinion, that completely changed people's assumptions. And I think that display of godlike power gave people the false impression that they were gods. That's my personal belief. I've never heard anybody say that, but I sincerely believe that. But whatever it was, post-war, our assumptions about the universe changed. And I think in retrospect, we look ridiculous. But nobody else has assumed that. From the Hivaro Indians at the Amazon headwaters to the Swedes. And by the way, thank you for hiring Swedes. No, nobody does. The most secular nation in the world, they were fervent evangelists until about 20 minutes ago. I mean, this is a brand new world that we live in. Not just secular, I mean, that began hundreds of years ago, but a civilization whose core assumption omits the possibility that we're not the most powerful force in the universe.
And I think it's very selfish of us to think that we are.
This never happened. And so, I mean, you could even just do the law of averages here. Are we right? Or is every other human being who's ever lived right? So it's Kamala Harris versus all history. What do you think?
I wonder.
And I'm kind of thinking...
And I wonder who's going to take Fostonia out, because he is well within striking distance. And we have many a toit donos that could take him out.
The overwhelming evidence lands on there is a god. And this is not the end. Nobody's ever not thought that. And so if you're willing to kind of roll the dice on that, considering you're going to die anyway, there's really nothing to be afraid of other than cowardice. Living as a slave, hating yourself, being held in contempt by those closest to you, living without purpose, those are the things to fear. So I will stop with that and just say, take heart. Take heart. Your bravery is scarier to the other side than any weapon you could marshal. They melt in the face of it. They've only advanced this quickly because they've met no resistance at all, because everybody is a cucked coward. Oh, I don't want to make anybody mad. Yeah, really? It stops here. If you had 10% of the population take that posture, this crap would end immediately. That's it. That's all it takes. And I hope that we will. Anyway, thank you very much.
That was a good speech. That was a very good speech. Thank you for the blessing.
But how many of you want to hear a little bit more from Tucker? A little more? Woo! All right.
Thank you.
Look at this bozo using a flash on her DSLR like it's going to light the whole room that's already lit. It's the same thing when people use flash on their cell phones at a concert. Like, what the fuck are you trying to do?
Do you want the power sheet?
Oh, yeah. Oh, all right.
Can I just say, I'm sorry for sounding like an extremist. I don't mean to. I'm actually the most temperamentally moderate person I know.
Yeah.
I hate change of all kinds, and I don't seem to, I don't want to seem like a nutcase, but I just feel like the stakes are high.
Yeah, the stakes are high. So I think the place that I want to start is with this focus on the elites or the ruling class that you keep talking about. Because I think a lot of people hear you legitimately railing against all of our institutions and the individuals running them, and they think that you're a populist, right? But actually, you believe we ought to have a leadership class in America. It just needs to be a good one, not a rotten one. And so I'm wondering if you can unpack that tension between the sort of legitimate populism that's rising up right now in this country, but also the need for something constructive, not just a revolution, but actually newly.
He does, Drunkle. He fucking does. What do you think about the populism?
Leaders, how do you think about that tension?
I mean, there are many. I would just say to answer the last part first. I think the people currently in charge need to be scared into backing off. I just need to be clear. I don't think this is like it's gonna
make the ruling class scared. Yes, as a taste from life. We're spending experience. Luckily, no surgery needed after our spent getting no doctor. Whoa. Well, that's good, Nunya.
Gonna work like, oh, listen, I've got a better idea. No. There needs to be pushback that wakes them up. We've gone too far. We've really transgressed.
For some reason, however this is being filmed now, maybe it's the lighting, is fucking with my eyes.
This is too much. No, I'm hardly
it's a couple of frames off.
A populist. My gosh, there's no society in history. Look, there's always a leadership class.
Oh, it's 1080p at 60 frames. It's interpolated. That's what. Okay.
Number of people who make the bulk of decisions. It's a matter of two things. One, you know, in a democracy, the average person should have some power. Shouldn't be completely powerless. Labor has no value now, right? So the average middle-class person doesn't have any economic power, again, because labor has no value. I see Joe Biden with the UAW, and I was like, it's a joke. This is a joke. That union's a joke, but the whole idea that the working man can do anything is like silly. And so the only power the average person has in our country is political, is voting. My view,
which I still hope we have that power,
actually is to prevent populism by having better leadership. So it's not, and I am especially mad about it since I'm not sort of like guessing about this. I spent my whole life with these people. I grew up with them, and I spent my professional life for 35 years in Washington, D.C. with them. So it's not like I'm, you know, thinking, wow, it seems pretty crazy there. It's like I know firsthand because I know the people involved.
They're back. They're back here too. Look at it. They're back. They're back. Goodbye.
Hunter Biden was my next door neighbor, as I told you. So I'm very, very mad. It's very personal. They hate me. I'm glad. And I just feel like if you have authority, if you have power, and this is where I am very Protestant, like you do have a special obligation to try to help people. To whom much is given, much is expected. I really believe that. I really believe, I hate to say it, in noblesse oblige, I really believe that. Buy the housekeeper a new car, it's your duty. And so if you're running the richest country in history and you're stealing it all for yourself, and the main cause of death between the ages of 18 and 44 is suicide.
Faustonia's talking that shit in chat.
And the second is fentanyl OD. That's a sign that, you know, you've really failed. I'm sorry, it is. And I'm super mad about it.
Don't go to the hospital.
We were chatting on the phone before the event a few weeks ago.
Be a man. Don't.
That's fair too. It fits perfectly. I think it's perfectly fine to be afraid of death. How you handle or overcome that fear to do great things. That's true. That is very true. Thank you, Steelfang, and what an apt dono for the conversation too.
And just so you know, Linda, all my compliments to you were sincere because I was talking with Tucker about how you embody this sense of both the love of high culture, but also this connection with ordinary people. And as I was describing this to you, you said, well, you know, the reason that this doesn't exist anymore is because of status anxiety.
Yes.
Can you unpack that? I started writing and I
have
blown away.
So many theories, some of which are forbidden and naughty, but they're real. I think that, I think the turnover, it's just, like, we've just had all these massive changes in American society.
What? Drunkle, why?
And I think a lot of people who currently have positions of authority are very anxious about preserving them. And so, for example, there is this weird taboo, and it's not weird actually, it does make a kind of sense, about expressing any kind of sympathy or affection for the white working class. Like, why is that? I mean, or any worker, but particularly the white working class. And I happen to live among them, so I see it a lot. But like the one thing you could never say in Georgetown when I was a kid is like, you know, you could feel sorry for everybody in the most obscure, you know, orphans of Bhutan. But like the Archie Bunker world was like, they deserve to die. And now, of course, they are dying, and that's not accidental at all. They were left to die, and their deaths were hastened, I think, by leadership class that really hates them. And it's like, why? What'd they do wrong? Anyway, at best, they were like chewed with their mouths open or something, but like they didn't actually commit any real sins. And I think that a lot of people in our leadership class are like, it's almost like seeing a first cousin you didn't grow up with, who is like taking a different path. Anyone who has I have this, who's like first cousins that are just like very different from you, and you run into them and you're like, ooh, there's something awful about it. They kind of look like you, but they're different. It's one of the, it's almost like certain simians freak us out.
Uncanny Valley shit, yeah, I dig that. That's how I am with my sister.
Because they have like human eyes, they're just too close. And so I think in order to lead, you need to be secure, both with yourself, you need to have an ordered personal life and an ordered, stable family. I think it's absolutely essential. I would never take life advice from someone whose children hated it. I wouldn't. Why would I? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Would you take real estate advice from a homeless person? No. So I think they are very caught up in like things that don't matter at all, like dumb credentials and what stupid school you went to. No offense, I don't.
Yeah, Drunkel's right. Do not incite violence. We don't do that to you.
Care. That's immaterial. What I care about is what you produce. I care about the fruits of the tree, and they don't. And so they're very anxious people, I have to say, and very loathsome.
So the interest.
I know, Frankenbean. I know.
Of honest conversation. I'm curious. So we're here. We have the founders of the conservative movement with us in this room, and I'm wondering, for your vantage point in your own lifetime, what you would assess as the most profound accomplishment of the conservative movement, and also the biggest blind spot that you have seen over the past 30, 40 years.
I mean, it's changed so much. I mean, I would have told you 5 years ago the biggest.
I want to hear that question again. Hold on.
So the biggest blind spot that you have.
What was the other part?
So we're here. We have the founders of the conservative movement with us in this room, and I'm wondering, for your vantage point in your own lifetime, what you would assess as the most profound accomplishment of.
The most profound accomplishment of the modern conservative movement. I would say the accomplishment and the blind spot are pretty much the same answer, and it's the America First movement. That is easily the most profound accomplishment of conservatives. I think it is. Because it's listening to the people, and I think that is the biggest blind spot, is that they don't listen to people. By and large, people are not pro-Ukrainian funding. By and large, people are not pro open border immigration. But conservatives don't see that in the America First movement, by and large. The proper one, not the Fuentes America First. They tend to see those things the way they are.
The conservative movement, and also the biggest blind spot that you have seen over the past 30, 40 years.
Since it was the size of a cantaloupe, oh, yeah, mine, the little lump I have is maybe like dime-sized. It's not round, though.
I mean, it's changed so much. I mean, I would have told you 5 years ago the biggest blind spot was just assessing the real-world effects of economic policies you think are going to work. And just to be clear, I'm a free market guy. I'm for lower taxes. I'm for less regulation. But I just think I'm for those things because I think they produce more human happiness. And 5 years ago, I would have said the conservative firmament in Washington doesn't pay enough attention to that, but I think they do now. Actually, Heritage has spent a lot of time on this under Kevin, and I'm really grateful to see it. I mean, the biggest failure of the conservative movement is the world that we have now, none of which is conservative, and it's getting more left-wing by the day. The biggest success of the conservative movement is persisting and existing. It's still here, which is kind of incredible, given the firepower brought to bear against it. And it's so important for there to be an intellectual option to the tiny suite of options available to your average young person. Like, I just can't get over how narrow and stultifying their program is. It's like, whine about your identity, whine about your identity. It's like, they're not offering anything. Live alone, childless, in some drywall-clad pod in a big crime-ridden city and work for some stupid bank until you die. But you get weed! Whoa, really? Yes, and we have DoorDash. No way. Yeah, that's the future they're promising. So, I mean, they don't.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't like it. I don't like the look of it.
Don't actually have a lot to offer. And I think the institutional conservative movement, Heritage, ISI, some others that haven't totally disgraced themselves like AEI, which has really disgraced itself in my opinion. I don't know if I was clear enough about that. But the few that persist in kind of trying to defend Western civilization, they offer a real option. And I just know from the ISI kids rotating through my office, I mean, cheap labor, but we did exploit them. But I know that there's like some random kid in some random town who hears about somebody's like, wait, what's that? What's that? And then he winds up at ISI or Heritage or other institutions on the right and learns more, and his life has changed and America's improved. It's always worth telling the truth, even if you feel like nobody's listening. Every prophet was vindicated in the end throughout the Hebrew Bible, every single one. And a lot of them got stoned to death. In fact, I think the majority. But the other were like, I mean, do you know how Jeremiah's neighbors felt about him? Loathing. Now we revere him. So like, it's worth telling the truth no matter what.
So two challenges facing America. Obviously, at home, we have a massive administrative state, which has rendered basically our republic unrecognizable from what it would have been 100 years ago.
Yes.
Second, on the world stage, we
That's annoyingly accurate.
have America extended in endless wars, but we also have the real threat of a rising China and the situation in Ukraine. So what I'm wondering about is, at a fundamental level, is America an empire? And if so, when did it become an empire? And is it possible to restore our republic without destroying our prosperity and power?
I mean, because ISI, everyone's fluent in this language, so obviously empires destroy republics, obviously. And so you don't want an empire. We've never admitted that we have one. How many military bases, Victoria? You would know this. How many military bases, how many military countries do we have a military presence around the world? 120, okay. Yeah, not an empire. By the way, there are good things about empires. Keeping the trade routes open, I think, is essential. We've used it, the fact that we have the unique privilege of possessing the world's reserve currency has made 33 trillion in debt possible. I mean, there have been upsides, I would say, but it does tend to rot your republic. I spent the last 4 months traveling around the world because I was trapped in a studio for like decades, and though we go to Europe in the summer for a week, I haven't traveled in like 20 years. I haven't really just spent months on the road going to different places. And so I've been to a bunch of continents, interviewed a lot of people, some off camera, mostly to answer the question, what does the world look like beyond America? And geography, I still believe, even in 2023, defines people's worldview and defines geopolitics. I mean, where you live matters. And in fact, it's all important. So I still think, despite the digital revolution. And I discovered a million things. I'm not gonna be boring, but I'll just say in one sentence, the perception of America and of the world outside our borders is so different from the perception within our borders that it raises a lot of questions, like really very serious questions about our ability to know things. I mean, our media, I'm sure every person in this room distrusts the media and thinks they lie to you.
Yes, they should.
Man, you go to the Middle East, Latin America, Eastern Europe, Western Europe, anywhere. I've been to all those places recently. It's crazy the things they know that we don't. And I'll just give you one example. Whenever you think of the war against Russia or the war in Ukraine, and I don't want to debate it, and I think everyone involved, most people on both sides have good intentions. I'm not attacking anybody. If you've got views opposite mine, it doesn't make you a traitor or a bad person in my view. Honest people reach different conclusions very often, including there. However, every person in America who I ever met was convinced for the first year and a half that Ukraine was winning, was on its way to winning. We just need to send more material.
Because that's all the mainstream media said. Ukraine's got this fight in the bag. They're taking the W home.
They would win. The view for the rest of the world is like, that's insane. Because they're looking at the fundamentals. It's not even a political question. Russia has 100 million more people than Ukraine. Russia is the largest landmass in the world. Russia has some of the deepest energy reserves on planet Earth, and Russia also has massive industrial capacity. And Ukraine has none of those things. What? And you're telling me, with the help of NATO, which doesn't actually exist in the sense that most Americans think that it does, is going to beat Russia? I mean, however much you may fervently want that, that's not going to happen. And I can promise you that no smart person outside our borders ever for 1 second thought that was going to happen. And yet every person I know, including very smart foreign policy wonks, it's somehow
Yeah, those experts. When was the last time we had an expert be correct on anything they were experting?
convince themselves is going to happen. Now, what that suggests to me is a systemic problem where we're not capable of reaching obvious conclusions about things anymore, and that's death. Like, ideology aside, opinions aside, if you can't even assess basic, like Wikipedia level information, who's got the advantage? 100 million more people? Okay. No, they're gonna lose. We're gonna topple Putin. That makes me really worry. Not just the decisions we're making, but the way that we're making them concerns me a lot.
We have time for one more question, and all of you actually have a copy in your gift bag of Tucker's book, The Long Slide, and it is an autographed.
Oh, I think I have that book.
Copy.
What?
It's autographed. So I've seen he's been signing some books. If you actually flip the page over, his signature's already there. You can still come up and say hi. So this is a reflection on 30 years in journalism and some of the pieces you've published. So one really long question and then a short one. How has journalism changed over the course of your lifetime? But then lastly, and maybe you could address this to our ISI students and campus journalists, what would you say to a young investigative reporter at one of our campus news?
Oh boy, what is this? Texas gun rights and Kyle Rittenhouse denounces anti-Semitism and Nick Fuentes Nick Fuentes visit. While I have office space in the building, Fuentes said while I have office space in the building Fuentes visited, I did not take part in any meeting with him, nor would I, said Rittenhouse. As soon as I was made aware Fuentes was in the office, I asked my supervisor to be excused for the day. The entire department thankfully dismissed. Fuentes has attacked me personally, and his heinous views denigrate the memory of my Jewish family, some of whom were victims of the Nazis. Whoa, so was Fuentes trying to clout chase off of Rittenhouse?
Newspapers, who wants to be the next Tucker Carlson?
How has it changed? I mean, well, my dad was a journalist. That's why I went into journalism. My great-grandfather was a journalist, ran the Dallas Morning News. So I grew up in a world where, you know, people read books and told stories about places they'd been and amazing things they'd seen and remarkable people they'd interviewed. And the whole goal in my house growing up with my dad and my brother was to lead an interesting life. And that was my goal when I started. It was not to like tell the truth to power or whatever. That never occurred to me. I mean, I felt like, I don't know, I was from a world that was in power. I didn't need to tell the truth to power. I believed in the world I was in, and that had no role in my conception of journalism. I just wanted to see interesting stuff and meet interesting people. I just wanted at the end to be like, yeah, I had a really interesting life. Grandpa's an interesting guy. That was my whole goal. But the one thing I knew about journalism was, in the end, the journalist is the guy who gets to give the
It doesn't even matter.
finger to the king. Like, that's your job. And you had to be fearless. And my father and my grandfather were fearless guys. Tough people, for real. Like, legit. And I wrote about my dad in there. Tough human being. So it's so different from that now. I mean, of course, it's just a Praetorian Guard that exists to protect hedge fund managers and Kamala Harris. I mean, it's literally their job is to take the people with the most power and attack you for criticizing them. Well, I remember asking well, I've had so many debates about this, but like, and I'm just going to offend people, but it's just a question I asked once, which is, if we're for work, then why do we tax work at twice the rate of capital? Why do we do that? And I have investments, I'm against raising capital gains rates or whatever, but like it is a statement of value, right? We tax Marlboro Reds, honestly, a great cigarette, because we don't want you to smoke them. You know, in Scandinavia, a quart of vodka is $60 because all the Scandinavians are drunks and they know it. They don't want them to drink. So
that's fair, Frankenbeans, yeah.
We're taxing labor at twice the rate of capital. What does that tell you? We don't want you to work. So I raised this point once to somebody who immediately called me a communist. I was like, I don't think I'm a communist. And then I raised it on TV and immediately called her racist. Racist! All right. So that kind of gives away the whole game right there. And by the way, just to be clear, I know I'm making everyone uncomfortable. I'm not calling for raising capital gains rates, but I would like to see parity between the two, because why wouldn't you? I mean, that's insane, actually, if you think about it. It's very offensive. And by the way, trust me, that along with high gas prices is one of the single most offensive things to people in lower income zip codes. But the media never raise these questions. They never raise basic economic questions, ever. And they attack anybody who does. And moreover, they protect some of the worst people in the world from scrutiny because they have power. That is like a complete, it's like a scientific inversion. That's like an X-ray of what journalism is supposed to be. And the last thing I'll say, which brings me great sadness, I've thought about it many times, is I have 4 children, 1 son, who's a big reader and smarter than I am, and all my kids, 3 of them went to the same college, decent college, so he finishes college, and I take him fishing, because you're not looking at each other so you can talk. And I say, have you considered journalism since like spring of his senior year? And he's like, well, and I said, it's like multiple, you've been 4th generation in our family, like it's an honorable thing. And he's like, no, I don't think so. I was like, no journalism at all? He goes, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but they lie and they're losers.
That's a great way to put it. They lie and they're losers.
And I was like, no, it doesn't hurt my feelings at all. just devoted my life to it, okay. And of course, he did hurt my feelings. I said, what are you gonna do? He goes, I want to go into politics. I was like, really? You're choosing politics over journalism? And he's like, there's less lying. It's just super straightforward. Vote for my guy. I'm not like showing up being like, I'm the protector of the downtrodden and then like flacking for Sam Bankman-Fried. You know what I mean? Which is the whole media. And so he went in that direction. And honestly, that right there just tells you, like, if your kids aren't continuing the life that you lived voluntarily, choosing not to do the things that you did, says a lot about you and what you did, doesn't it? Yeah. So I can't say I regret anything, but if I had to do it again, I don't know, I'd probably sell asbestos or something. Do you know what I mean? Or peddle chewing tobacco to children or something a little bit more popular and honorable. You know? Your kid ever tried Copenhagen?
Faustonia, it looks like you might rule the day out with the very low stream boss HP, my man.
All right. We're actually going to end there. Let's give it up for Tucker Carlson.
That was pretty good. That was pretty good. I think there's one thing over here that I wanted to take a look at for just a minute.
Tucker.
Here we go. And with this, no, not this one. Hold on one second. I gotta find the video. I tried egging people on. Oh, clearly they don't want to take you on, buddy. They are scared. They're scared. Oh, it was to see if this is worth watching. Hold on.
What I call transgender ink deserves to be highlighted in a very visible way. Why? Sex reassignment surgeries and hormone replacement therapies are a combined value of $2.94 billion. By 2030, it would increase to $7.5 billion. There are no long-term studies that show the efficacy of taking these very powerful pharmaceuticals. One of the most graphic and invasive procedures is a vaginoplasty. That is where male to female patient is castrated, testicles are...
Sorry, I'm saving up on getting an AR-10. Dude, I don't think you want to do it. I think an AR-10 is a bad move. I am in the process of trying to offload mine. I got to shoot one not super long ago, and I hated it. I hated shooting it.
And the penis is inverted to create a vaginal cavity.
They can't even do lip filler in a convincing way in this country. You can't tell me they can recreate something as complex as female genitalia.
Plus, at 308 ammo is, from what I understand, slowly being phased out in favor of 300 blackout. I don't know if the two are really comparable, but literally every 308 I've ever shot has been disappointing and really not fun to shoot.
Biden administration has kind of tacitly endorsed reconstructive surgery for minors.
The child will often know that they are transgender from the moment that they have any ability to express themselves.
There's 300,000 transgender youth. That number has, by the way, doubled over 5 years. They face a lifetime of zero sexual function.
It's almost too crazy.
It's perverse.
Okay, yeah, this will go well with the Sam Seder clip I wanted to respond to, so we'll save this one. We'll save this one. But that will be it for the show tonight, guys. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out. Thank you for the incredible show. Guys, I will see you tomorrow at 3 o'clock EST for the Sunday, midweek Sunday. So, guys, thank you. Have a lovely evening, and I will see you all tomorrow. Good night, guys.
Almost time for Halloween. Don't come to my house or else I'll suck your dick. Blood. I'll suck your blood.
Oh, Dark Will for the 2769 on the way out. Let's see if this one has been seen. It has not been seen. But Faustonia still. Thanks, guys. Faustonia still edging out with very little HP. Let me annotate this real quick. Don't come to my house or I'll ... Save. Good night, guys. Plus, what the fuck? Barely hanging on the stream, boss. Oh, you got a little bit of thread there. You're like that tooth. You like that tooth that just won't come out? You know what I mean? All right. That's it, guys. Thank you, and we will see you all to... what the fuck is this? Americans, how does it feel to fund two wars at the same time? I said I paid $30 for a bag of Halloween candy. And Wizard of Cost said, dude, you need to chill on the candy consumption. It's Halloween, you fucking reader. Okay, good night.